Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on Twitch. Hope you're having a wonderful crap. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Everything's just blurring together. Wednesday. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. I'm using the foldable, okay? It's finally happened. We've been trying to do this for nearly a year because I did order the Galaxy Fold. They took the money from my account. Don't worry, they put it back and everything. But still, I tried to review that phone. I just refused to drive 6 hours to review that phone. So that's why you didn't ever get a review for it, because they didn't want to ship it. But as I said, the first one they actually ship to people is the one I will actually buy and review. And now it's here. Been using it for a while. I am working on my opinions to it. I've thankfully recorded two people's reaction to it because I know that foldables are not something just everybody has and sees very often. So two people in my personal life, I've just documented their reaction to catch their first impressions with a foldable phone. Those may make their way into the review. I'm not entirely sure if I'll put them in yet, if they're interesting enough. But either way, thank you guys for joining. Nubish Expert, hey, our developer, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. Appreciate it. Is Tailosive moving to New Morphid? I don't know. I don't know how to move to it because I'm just the guy in front of the camera. Am I a design scheme of any kind in the first place? Literally just got done watching your Z Flip unboxing, then saw this stream had started. Well, yeah, I filmed that unboxing on my birthday actually, which was Monday. Now it is Wednesday, so I unboxed it and started using the phone 2 days ago. And yeah, I guess if we wanted to dive into my later impressions, are that I guess not much of what I thought of foldables has changed. If I apologize if there was any giant breakthrough you were hoping for, if you thought that once the Apple sheep, once he tries them, because I've seen a lot of people criticize the Fold, but then they try it, and then everything changes. I honestly, I wanted something like that to happen, just for the sake of analytics in my channel. It would be good for me to have a giant turnaround, but I was waiting for some type of breakthrough for me to start using this thing and say, you know what? There's some use case or there's some angle that I'm not thinking of it, and once I have it myself, that's when everything will suddenly become clear. And it didn't happen. I'm sorry to say, if you don't like me because of my harshness and my criticism, or me not having a good grasp of the future of foldable technology, the using of the Z Flip for the past few days have not changed my opinion on foldable tech. Let me start out by not being too harsh and just say it's cool. It's interesting technology. It's very fascinating given, I've never in my life, you guys saw my reaction in the unboxing. I thought it was impressive. I've never seen a display do that before. Okay? And any device that's not a laptop, where the display just keeps going both ways. I've never seen a device do that before. So that was cool to see something I haven't seen. But it very quickly, using it all day yesterday, I started realizing why this is going to be a niche market and why this is Gimmickville. I know there's been a lot of hypes around foldable technology and a lot of work trying to be put into the idea that displays can be warped back and forth repeatedly. But that fundamental flaw with foldables that I've seen brought up far too many times in comments, and you've heard it from me as well. Why? Why is someone asking for foldable phones? Is there a reason we wanted foldable phones? Well, I'm quickly realizing there's not much of a practical use case to them. Very little. There's a couple. I won't say there's no practical use cases, but the compromises make them very, very hard to tolerate. So you'll probably hear a lot of what I say in this live stream in the final review because it is my early opinions. And sometimes you need to use a phone for a couple weeks to truly get a hang of it. But other times there are things that I will figure out in the first day that don't really change for the rest of the product use. And I feel like that's going to be it for the foldable, because what I've really discovered here is that I'm having to remind myself to fold it. Because maybe it's because I never owned a foldable phone. I mean, a flip phone. I'm referring to not foldable display tech, but just like my first phone ever, just device that I could call and text people on, was an iPhone. So I've grown up with this slab of glass, and I'm just so incredibly accustomed to when I'm done using the phone, I turn it off. I click a button and I put it down. I set it on the couch. I set it on the desk. I set it on the charger. And this is an extra step on both ends. This is an extra step when it comes to unlocking the device and locking the device. And I've even seen people on Twitter say, well, you don't have to fold it up when you're done with it. You can just leave it unfolded. To which I say, that defeats the entire purpose of the product. Because if you ignore the fold, this is a really stupid phone. It just is. I'm sorry. Like, we can't avoid that. Like, from it, you have... I'm not even talked about the price point of this thing yet. But just let's ignore the price point for a second, okay? Let's just say this phone is not... Let's ignore that, because I know everyone brings that up. It's really, really expensive, but over time it'll get cheaper. Let's ignore price. I'm going to, for the next couple minutes, pretend this phone is not $1,400. Let's just say Samsung had a miracle. They had a breakthrough. They figured out how to make this phone. It cost $700. Okay. $700. All right. Okay. It's half the price of what it actually is. But for the sake of the example, it's a $700 phone. There's no water resistance. There's no dust resistance. There's no stereo speakers. There's a crease down the middle of the display. And we're ignoring the fold part, okay? We're ignoring that it's $1,400 and we're ignoring that it folds. The cameras are fine. They're okay. They're nothing that special. It's not the latest Snapdragon chip we can get. It's a last year's CPU. But hey, it's $700, right? It has a camera hole, which we've seen in other Androids in the past. There's no telephoto, but there's a little display on the outside. Well, okay, let's ignore that display too, because we wouldn't use that if it didn't fold. And the display is fairly weak. There's a phone that's been made. Okay, it's $700. Why should you get this one over the iPhone 11 or the 10R or something like that? Well, the bezels are fairly thin. I mean, I appreciate that Samsung made one size bezel all the way around. I'm glad they finally did that. Like, it's refreshing to have a Samsung phone that doesn't have a curved display. I've always been annoyed by that, and I don't have accidental presses with this. However, the bezel is lifted. It's not a seamless transition from pixels to bezel like it is on an iPhone, where you just have display and then bezel. With this, it's display and then big groove up to a bezel. Like, the bezel's lifted off from the phone part, which is a little annoying, especially in apps like Discord, where I'm having to swipe to the side all the time, and sometimes it doesn't register. So now, instead of accidental touches, I've had the display not hearing me. So from a technical level, if we just ignore the fact that it does this and it folds up, and we ignore the fact that it's $1,400, this is not a good phone. If we just cut out that part and this was just a $700 normal Android phone, no one would buy this. It's not a good buy. The specs aren't good. It's not impressive. There's too many compromises, and the price point isn't great in the first place. Resale value, I'm sure, would suck. To just get an iPhone 11 if you don't care about OS. If you can move easily between Android and iOS, then who cares? Gibberjust, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub as well. Appreciate that. So, if we ignored all of the benefits of a foldable, it's not that impressive, which is why the argument of just don't fold it doesn't really hold up for me. Because if your plan is not really to fold the phone that often, that proves my point. Foldables are not that useful. They're not that practical. I think they're just interesting. I think it's an interesting visual because as you capture the reaction, as I have now with people outside of the tech community, okay? I got a footage of my friend Dan looking at the Flip for the first time. He didn't even know foldables were a thing. He's not a techie person in the slightest. He uses an iPhone 6. He's not a techie person. He doesn't follow that stuff. Same with my sister. She does not watch tech videos. She also uses an iPhone 6. And I was just like, hey, can I film your reaction to this thing? And she's like, I don't know what that is. So I handed it to her, and I was like, just look at it and let me know what you think. And she looks at it, and everyone's like, whoa, that's wrong. Like, that's weird. That's bizarre. Because it's a reactionary thing. You look at it, and you're like, that's not normal. I'm not used to a phone doing that. It has a tremendous wow factor and a great demo. Anytime you show this to someone who's never seen a foldable before, they will have an interesting reaction because it is something out of the ordinary. But that in itself is not enough to sell a product. It's not enough because I've already discovered in the first hour that there's no practical argument for why this is better. If anything, it's worse in almost every possible way. It's worse for specs. It's worse for price. It's worse for durability. I would not even argue this is better for mobility, but that's probably just for my use case specifically. I mean, for one, I put my phone in my front right pocket. That's where my phone normally sits. And now, to be honest with you, when I reach for my phone, I have to reach farther than I'm used to. Before, I don't have to dig my hand super deep in my pocket. Before, it's making noises. Oh, great. Why didn't I mute this? But yeah, for one, watching videos on this thing with the giant black bars. Oh my God, give me a break. And they let you punch in. Let me pull up a YouTube video here, so you guys get an idea. Here's my good buddy Ryan Shaw. Check him out on YouTube. So if you're watching a video, look how giant these bars are. Like, they're huge. And the frustrating thing that I haven't had to deal with since pre-2017, for the past 3 years, I've never had to deal with a phone that doesn't have stereo speakers. So all the sound when you're watching a video in landscape especially is coming out from this side, which is really annoying when you've been accustomed to for years sound coming out of both sides of all the phones I've reviewed. The S10 Plus had stereo speakers, iPhone 7 Plus had stereo speakers, iPhone 10, 8 Plus, 10s, you've just been so accustomed to stereo speakers on things that when you finally go back to mono, it's like, ew. Okay, so this is a paused frame. This is how bad the squares are. Which is also, by the way, when there's some of you guys commenting or tweeting at me like, Drew, why don't you film in 2x1? Because that's what the rest of the tech community is doing. They act like most of YouTube is doing it. It's not true. Most YouTubers still upload everything in 16:9. That's why our video thumbnails are 16:9, by the way. But there's a growing trend in the tech community that we need to shoot in 2x1 in a wider aspect ratio because that fits modern smartphone displays better. This is the exact reason that's a stupid idea, because smartphone displays are changing constantly, and it's dumb to act like 2x1 is going to be a one-size-fits-all, because it's not. Because 1 year you have something like the iPhone 10, and you're like, okay, yeah, 2x1 fits okay. And then the next year they do crap like this, and you're going to be changing your aspect ratio every single year because phone displays are always changing. It's not a good idea to try to adapt your content to the current year's smartphone display. It's not going to age well. So most displays are still 16:9. You can pinch to zoom in if you need to. If you want every pixel to be utilized, that's why I still shoot in 16:9. Anyway, so with this exact reason, this is why you get the big black bars. But if you decide you want to punch in, and you're like, hey, you know what? I want actually every single pixel to be utilized on this display. When you decide to punch in, let me get to a part where it shows his beautiful face so you guys can get an idea. Okay, someone's talking. Punch in, cuts off a substantial amount of the content. Now his head's cut off at the top, and it gets even worse when videos have different types of framing. So you can almost never do like the punch in command type thing. It's let me go to the chat here. This is supposed to be a Q&A. If you don't fold the Z Flip and put it in your pocket, doesn't that lead to Bendgate issues? Back to Louis Rossmann video. Well, this is intentional Bendgate, but yeah, I mean, have you scratched the display yet? Good question. I have not experienced any issues with display durability as far as I can tell. I do notice the crease. It's somewhat significant. Oh my God, I think I see one. Where's that? Oh, okay, it's wiping off. I haven't really paid much attention. I probably should be though, huh? I thought I saw one. I didn't. It seemed to rub off a little bit. But you feel the crease physically when scrolling. And what concerned me that I brought up in the unboxing videos, the first time I started using the phone, I was like, oh, I don't feel crease. There's no crease there. Then I started folding the phone a couple more times, and it started to get worse. And to me, it's the biggest giveaway that it's not glass. Like, some people were telling me that the Z Flip display feels like glass. It doesn't to me. It's like a dead giveaway. The second I started using it, I was like, yeah, this feels like plastic. I mean, it's hard plastic. It doesn't give like a screen, like a crappy OtterBox plastic. It's like a, you can tell it's a higher quality plastic, but it does not give the feeling of glass that I'm accustomed to on my iPhone. Also, another huge annoyance I have with this thing is it's incredibly unergonomic. The display is insanely tall, and it's terrible for one-handed use. This is by far my biggest criticism of the clamshell foldable, as many people think, well, Galaxy Fold, that didn't go well, so clearly the future of foldables is to be more like this. Just a regular phone that happens to fold. And I get what Samsung is doing. The biggest issue with the Galaxy Fold, I think, aside from all of its durability problems and the fact that unfolded, it really wasn't that great a tablet in the first place, was that it was so dang expensive. People are like, foldables, they're not going to be the future, especially if they cost over $2,000. That's not going to work. So Samsung was like, okay, we need to get people comfortable with the idea of foldables by making them cheaper. So we're going to make a foldable. Doesn't matter if it's very useful, but at least it'll be cheaper so that people can understand that foldables are somewhat obtainable. So they did this. But this ignores all of the benefits of the Galaxy Fold, which was that you could have a tablet-sized display, and I use that term very loosely because 7.3 inches is not the size of any tablet. But again, tablet-sized display that could fit in your pocket. This ignores all that, and it takes a giant display, but it's just a very awkwardly tall one because it's not a very wide display. Like if you compare it to my iPhone display, I got my iPhone here, watching content, like width-wise, you actually get to fill in more screen on this. So like, if we just brought up a YouTube video on both these screens, it would look near identical, a little bit better on the iPhone actually, because it's a little bit larger. Because this is a wider phone. Like if you layer the two, I should not take my word for it. The Pro Max is wider. It's not as tall if you put them next to each other. This phone is a lot taller. So in that way, it's like, is this a 6.7 inch display? Yes, but given the width is less than this, it's like there's less viewable area. I feel like that display size is wasted on just height, just sheer height. I don't know why this display needs to be this tall. I feel like if their angle was that foldables can be more portable, it doesn't need to be, useful. It's just you can fold this thing up and fit it in your pocket easier. They should have gone smaller with this. I don't think it needed a 6.7 inch display. I mean, they shouldn't have made a foldable in the first place because the technology is clearly not ready yet. But outside of that, if your angle is to be more focused on portability, I would say this should have been more like a 6.3 inch display. If you have to keep this aspect ratio, it would have been way better for your fingers. Like, I have huge hands, by the way. I'm 6 feet tall. I have very wide hands. I always want the biggest display possible, whether it's my iPad, my Mac, my MacBooks, my iPhone. I want the biggest display. I'm a Pro Max user, and I can easily reach everything on that display with one hand. With this, it's like, okay, Twitter, it's like Twitter down here. Now I want to drop down settings way up here. See, this is what I mean about the raised bezel. It makes dragging stuff down like that a lot harder. So it's not ergonomic. I'm constantly readjusting it, and my biggest criticism is one-handed use. When I pull this thing out of my pocket, I'm used to my phone, raise to wake, activates Face ID, looks at my face, unlocks, swipe up, I go home. It's that simple. This, pull out of my pocket, of course no raise to wake because it's just, it's folded up. So I have to pry it open, and this is a very difficult process. I mean, I know it's in the long term of things. In the short term, it's not that hard, but in the span of taking out your phone and checking it all the time, it gets annoying because they wanted this thing to be able to support itself so it could hold itself in this position. But this is something original flip phones did not do. They were kind of spring loaded. I didn't own one, but I've seen them and I've seen how they work. For one, they were small. Original flip phones were not this big and bulky, and they did not hold their position like this. There was not so much resistance in the hinge. Now, there's so much resistance in the hinge that you can't just, like on old flip phones, you could just pry it open a little bit, and then, boom, the whole thing will snap open. Like it opens really, really quickly and easily, and it's small, so it's not that hard on your thumb. Given this thing is so large compared to traditional flip phones, when unfolding it, it's like, pry it all the way, and it's also fingerprint locked. So now that my thumb has spent all its energy trying to open the thing, move to fingerprint reader, now we unlock. And it's just way more tedious of a process than what we're used to on traditional smartphones, which I find especially hilarious because so many people used to criticize Apple for requiring you to swipe up to go home. But swiping up is infinitely easier than prying open a hinge. which I've heard even other reviewers say that the hinge gets weaker with time. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. For one, it might make unfolding it easier, but for two, like, how's that going to age like 6 months from now? Okay, let's answer some donations here. We got some bits from Overachiever. Who's seen Jerry Rig Everything's video? It's so satisfying seeing the phone get ready. I knew that would be a big success. I mean, everyone, as soon as that phone was unveiled, everyone wanted the Jerry Rig Everything video. But I mean, yeah, it was kind of funny. Thank you for the bits, Wixo Melody. Didn't say anything, but appreciate it. If Apple ever does a foldable, you think it would have external outside screen? Yeah, I don't think if Apple did a foldable, they would do this. I don't think this has enough use cases. This is interesting tech. Again, I will say it. I will say it for the people in the back or the people who just joined the Twitch stream. It's cool that a display can do this, but cool is not going to be worth it to people. That's not a selling point itself in itself. It's not enough to replace the modern smartphone. It means that there's a small niche of people that may like it, but it's the definition of a gimmick. It's a cool, nifty little feature that doesn't really matter in the end. It's not practical. And if Apple were to do a foldable, again, I don't think they will, but if they were to, I think they would try to do something merging of the Pro Max in a iPad mini. And Apple would do a foldable better than anyone else because they actually sell phones and tablets in massive success and high customer satisfaction. Samsung can't say the same. Samsung sells tablets, but they're nowhere near on Samsung. They're nowhere near on Apple's level of the iPad success and customer satisfaction. I mean, just look at the iPad Pro. Like, no Samsung tablet can touch that, and it's nearly 2 years old. Let's see. Go in public and fold it in front of others. See what they think. They'll probably not care. Well, like I said, I filmed the reactions of two people in my personal life that are not interested in tech stuff. I just wanted to catch their reaction of it unfolding. And they're done with it usually about around the 90-second mark, you know? I show it to them like, hey, try to open it, see what happens. And they open it, they're like, whoa, that's so cool, that's so weird, it's so different and unique. And then they're like, here you go. You know, it's not like they just saw God. You know, it's interesting. It's something that I think should be at CES. It's a cool party trick is another thing I would describe it as, but absolutely not the future. This is where all smartphones will go. Absolutely not. Just from a practical standpoint, it's ridiculous that I have to open my phone every time I take it out of my pocket. Like, there's a reason the original iPhone did not have a built-in cover like a flip phone. There's a reason they didn't do that, is because they knew it was unnecessary. Like, when you're embracing a touch display, there's no need to have it all fold up. Let's see. I feel bad for the Samsung engineers that have spent years getting academic qualifications and experience, only to end up creating the Galaxy Fold and CE Flip. Well, they probably think it's interesting. I mean, Samsung probably thinks this is the future of smartphones as a whole, so I mean, they probably think what they're doing is important, but I imagine that I feel more bad for the engineers in the sense that there are likely deadlines that Samsung executives are pushing them to meet. Like, hey, you got to get this flip phone done. Don't test it. Don't send out review units. We got to get it out there. We got to get it done right now. There's no time. Excuse me. Wixo says, would have been cool if the power button not only unlocked the phone, because it works as a Touch ID sensor, but also opening the hinge without you manually having to do it. The technology probably isn't possible yet, but it could be a thing. So, yeah, I thought about that too. Like a spring-loaded mechanism would probably help with this. If there was some type of switch somewhere, maybe right here, you know, there's nothing but the Samsung logo on that part of the device. But if there was some type of spring that you could press down on and it would open it up immediately, that could help, but probably cost more. You would also lose this functionality, which is what they were trying to preserve. You know, they were out advertising the fact that you could, you know, use it as a makeup device, you know, and like prop it up, you know, leave it on a table and prop the camera like this. So that was one of the use cases they were trying to showcase. But if you did the spring mechanism, I don't think that could work unless you were putting motorized things. But whatever is motorized to unfold this thing would not be very quick. And it also doesn't fix the issue of having to collapse the display every time you're done with it. Whereas with my normal phone, when I'm done using it, I just lock. Now it's done. I can put it down. I don't have to lock and close or just close. It's just a slightly adding slight pressure to my thumb, which turns off the device, not having to unfold the whole thing or fold up the whole thing, which I think is far more inconvenient. You know what the Z Flip is missing? Slow-fies. That's a great point. We need way more slow-fies. When are we going to get more of those slow-fie buttons? Is the screen quality resolution worse than the iPhone 11 Pro? No, but I'm not a good guy to ask about pixel density and that kind of thing because I used the iPhone XR for about 2 months after using the XS Max, and it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, if you hold it really, really close to your eyes, yeah, you can see some pixel differences, but at average viewing distance, I'm not the screen junkie that's like, look really, really close. Can you see pixels? Like, I'm not that guy. I'm like, you use your phone at this angle, at this distance. So they're all fine. Yes, the display pixel density on this thing is fine. It's not something I would complain about. There's a lot of issues with the Flip, and the pixel density is not one of them. They got that fine. Samsung's always very good with their displays. The Galaxy Fold is still a better concept than the Z Flip because it has a useful feature at least. I made a tweet about this, and I'll probably bring it up in a video later, but the Z Flip is a flawed idea executed well, and the Galaxy Fold is a decent idea executed poorly. That's the way I see it. It's like they got this a lot better than I think the Galaxy Fold because, there's not a giant notch, there's not giant bezels, it's not $2,000 like the Galaxy Fold was, and that was a lot of the issues with it. Like in TV remote mode, you had giant black bezels, and no one wanted to use it like that. And when unfolded, you had this giant crease down the middle, and you had the giant asymmetrical notch. It's just kind of ugly in both regards. With this, at least when unfolded, it looks pretty fine. It just has a camera hold. There's no asymmetrical notch. There's no giant bezels. It's just a one-size bezel all the way around, and when unfolded, it looks pretty nice. So they executed it well. The price point, in regards to other foldables out there, this is the cheapest one. We're not talking about the Escobar phone. Don't bring that up. In regards to real foldables, this is $1,400, and it was executed well, but the fundamental idea of the product is flawed. It's not that useful, and it relies way too heavily on the selling point of being a foldable. Outside of that, there's really nothing exciting about it. There's, for a $1,400 phone in 2020, it's incredibly uneventful. After the first day of folding, I know there's some tech YouTubers out there, there's some analysts out there that are like, it just never gets old. It's just so exciting to have a phone that folds up and unfolds and stuff like. It's like, I'm sorry, it's just, that's not enough for me, and I don't think it'll be enough for someone outside of the tech community. As someone who's somewhat interested in high refresh rates and good cameras and phones, and I watch phones come out and compare them to other phones, and I'm interested in that stuff, and I'm already getting to the point where it's like, okay, I'm done using it, and I'll put it down, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, there, I used it. I used the feature. The symmetrical bezel is the only good-looking part of this thing. Yeah, I would probably agree with you. How's the vibration motor compared to the iPhone and the S10, if you remember? It's fine. I wouldn't say it's any worse. The vibration motor in it, I have no complaints with. It sounds, it feels, not sounds, fairly satisfying. I don't have any issues with that. I still think the iPhone gets it a little bit more satisfying with the Taptic engine, but I'm the Apple sheep. That comes down to personal preference. So I just think the iPhone feels better, but you may disagree. That's fine. Compared to the S10, it feels almost exactly the same, so I wouldn't worry about that. Not a concern I have. Did the wording say something about cold weather? It seems the display breaks faster because of cold weather. I did read an article about that, but no, there was no disclosure during boot up or on the packaging. They mostly just said the exact same things that they said with the Galaxy Fold, which I found funny because they were advertising ultra thin glass, which I have a whole rant about that argument. Any face unlock features available, or is it only fingerprint scanner to unlock the phone? You do have traditional face unlock, but it's not very secure. I don't think it'll work on things like banking apps or any type of third-party secure because it's not a dot projector or anything. It's literally just a camera. And I do have face unlock set up, but it is not very quick, to be honest with you. And I don't think it's because of the camera. I honestly think the reason Um, when I first set it up, I was like, okay, this prying it open with one hand thing and then putting the finger on the fingerprint reader. This is getting too cumbersome, so I'm just going to set up face unlock and hopefully that makes it easier. It doesn't, because the camera doesn't start looking for your face. We're not used to phones having to be folded up like this, so it can't really see your face until you've already opened it all the way. And it will unlock. I mean, it's slightly faster, but it is less secure. It's definitely nowhere near as close to secureness as Face ID. Uh, and it doesn't start looking until the phone is, already open and, unlocked like that. So I haven't had much success with the face unlock. It's it's there. It technically works, but I wouldn't say very reliably. It's very angle sensitive, and it's not good to be angle sensitive when the camera has to unfold like this every time. So it doesn't really save that much time. I thought it would, but not really. Let's see. What would you change other than the concept? What would I change? The size, I would say. If you're saying I can't change like the concept of foldables and they have to make this and they want to make a flip phone that looks like a smartphone when unfolded, that would be my biggest complaint, is that it's too big. I have large hands. I'm typically the guy that takes the bigger phone and the bigger iPad, but just the sheer aspect ratio they went with here is way too inconvenient unless you're like a football or a basketball player, with just giant hands that you can actually reach all the way up here and all the way down here. Is just way too big. If your angle is to say like people who want more compact smartphones, then make it small. Make like a 6-inch display, not 6.7 or sub 6-inch display, because then it would be really tiny and compact. You could fold it up real easily. So that's how I'd answer that. I heard that there is a crease in the camera hole. Is it true? Well, it warps a little bit. Like when you take when you turn the display off, you can tell that sort of how the crease bends light. I'm trying to see if I can show you. You see how the crease bends light a little bit off reflections? It does bend light a little bit on the camera hole, but no, there's no seam. So if you move your finger over the camera hole, you don't feel any ridges or anything. It's definitely under the display. So that's not a problem. Wouldn't worry about that. Interesting hearing from someone who's using the 11 Pro Max. Sounds not good for Samsung's form factor. Yeah, it's just I don't know why it has to be this long. Like why does it have to be so much taller than the other phones? Why couldn't they just match the aspect ratios of the Galaxy S10? Why did they have to make it so insanely tall? I don't get maybe they thought, well, now we can make it tall because it folds, but no, I mean the displays are already getting pretty tall. Like look at me with one hand on the Pro Max, right? We can swipe down from up here and we can swipe up from here. They're pretty I mean, I got big hands. Not most people can do this. This is why a lot of people prefer the iPhone 11. But I can easily access the control center and swipe up, and I don't have to readjust my grip, Whereas this thing, nearly impossible to do that. It's weird how 6 inches is small now in Samsung terms. Well, yeah, I mean, every single one of the S20s was over 6 inches. If you're going to make one focused on portability, make it smaller. I feel like Apple's the only company kind of catering to people who like smaller phones, and Samsung could have done that with the foldable and found a little bit of a bigger niche, but they didn't do that. Maybe batteries could be a reason. Yeah, I don't know. I'm no engineer. There might be reasons they had to make it this big. Who knows? Let's see. Have you had any durability issues? None so far. I'm happy to say that. Though I do baby my tech. I'm not. I saw Snazzy Lab saying that he was like putting his phone in sand for a meme photo, and I was like, no, I would not do that with this. I would keep this completely away from sand. Sometimes I like to briefly check my phone while taking a shower or something. I definitely did not do that with this. So I did not push the boundaries. I'm like, no, I'm not taking any chances with this thing. I'm babying it. I've put it in my back pocket a couple of times, but didn't feel good about it. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to take it out. Never mind. A folding phone protects the screen? Not really, because there's still a gap which stuff can fall in. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's definitely a gap in there, And the fact that I have to push so hard with my fingernail on the display to open it. You guys see how much my nail's touching the screen every time I open it like this? Like, I have to do that to open it. And yet it says on the packaging, like, don't push hard with a fingernail on the display. And we saw Jerry Rig Everything's video. This is not a fingernail-proof display. How you finding the return to Android in general? I'm finding it much less fun this time around. There's occasional things I like about. There's occasional things I like about switching to Android, but this time around it's just been cumbersome because I use Discord a lot on my phone, and Discord on Android sucks. Like, it's way harder to switch channels back and forth. And part of that's just from the Play Store optimization and Discord developers on the Play Store. Like, compared to iOS, it's so much smoother and cleaner over there. Whereas on Android, it still feels really clunky. Every time you open from a 90-degree hinge to complete open, you do the PewDiePie's, can you do this? Yeah. Can you do this? PewDiePie has a Galaxy Fold. His wife bought it for him. I remember that. I'm excited for him to come back. I miss him. I wish he would come back. Is the snap close fairly tactile? It sounds and looks sloppy. I would say I wouldn't describe it as sloppy. It's a pretty solid, like, I've tried, like, just very lightly pushing it from different angles, like the angles you're not supposed to push it from. And there's no popping. It doesn't give. Like, to be honest with you, I will say that's one thing that kind of surprised me. Of all things, if we're looking at positives, when I unboxed the Z Flip and started using it, I was like, this phone feels a lot more solid than I thought it would. I haven't experienced with much durability issues myself, but that does not mean they don't exist. I've seen lots of them reported. It's just objective that when you make a display that's, plastic, I don't care if it uses ultra thin glass. Like, let me go off on that for a second here, because I saw a lot of people trying to say that, yes, it does. The Z Flip does use glass. It's just in a different layer, and they put plastic on top. That was killing me. That was literally, like, annoying the crap out of me that people were saying, no, there's glass. What does it say about the glass if they had to put plastic on top of it to protect it? Do you think they could have just left out that plastic layer? No, because the glass is fragile. It's insanely fragile compared to standard glass, and you can't take off that plastic layer. You can't replace it. So the part of the display that you touch and the part of the display that gets damaged and you can't take it off, that's what scratches with a fingernail. That's no different in durability from the Galaxy Fold. I don't care if underneath somewhere there's glass, because I don't get to touch and interact with that part. People weren't mad at the Galaxy Fold because there wasn't glass underneath some layer somewhere. They were mad because it could scratch, it could show signs of wear very easily, and you couldn't use a screen protector on the surface, the part we look and touch at. Doesn't matter if there's glass somewhere in there. I mean, there's glass on the outside. That doesn't make me feel better about the inside, because this is the part I see. This is the part I interact with. If the glass was durable, they wouldn't need to put plastic over it. The fact that they put plastic over it says a lot about how durable the glass on the inside is. So are they scientifically, technically using glass? Yeah, they just found the most fragile glass in the world. A glass that acts almost identically to plastic. So they had to cover it with actual plastic. Otherwise, the display would have been damaged immediately. It's a stupid argument. I wanted to do a whole rant video on that, but I'm honestly getting kind of tired of ranting about foldables, and there was Apple news to talk about. So I'm like, nah. We'll save that for the review. That's a stupid argument, though. There were people who are like, no, it's in there, though. Who cares? Who cares if it's in there? The part we look at damages easily. No different than the last Fold. So it doesn't matter. I don't get, like, it's just marketing crap. It's not okay. It's not okay for them to be like, well, this one has a glass display somewhere. there's a glass somewhere in there. You can't see it or touch it. Oh, okay. PewDiePie hates Apple. He wants his wife to switch to Android. That's fine. And I support his decision. He doesn't like Apple products, and that's fine. That doesn't mean he's a bad creator. You know, I'm best friends with a lot of Android users, and that's okay. They don't like iPhones, and that's okay. It's all about choosing the device that makes the most sense for you. And PewDiePie is also very rich, so I don't think the Galaxy Fold is that insane to him because $2,000 is probably nothing. That's very obtainable for him. Whereas the mass market, no, don't think so. Let's see. A bit from Overachiever. How much do you think the Galaxy S10 will start to sell for now, considering the price hikes across the board? Well, Samsung's still selling it. Probably $600 or less, right? Probably less than that. By Samsung terms, the iPhone 5C was metal because it had a metal chassis. Exactly. The inside was metal, so the 5C has a metal design, right? Yeah, PewDiePie can get a new Galaxy Fold in a heartbeat, so it's not exactly the same thing. Was there other donations I missed? Let me scroll up here. What about battery? Battery seems fine. I haven't noticed it draining incredibly fast. Again, I haven't been using it for terribly long, but it's definitely not as good as the Pro Max, but it gets through the day. Yeah, we talking about this Lofi thing. Okay, let's scroll down here. I like how LG claimed the LG G5 was metal. Oh yeah, it's definitely marketing deception. That's what it is. Please make a rant. That might be a rant in the review video. Who knows? Maybe this will bring out Apple Sheep Overdrive or something. Oh, he hated using Mac because it had to upgrade. Windows Update. Don't hate him though. I mean, like, Felix is not that techie of a person. If you've been watching him for as long as I have, which is 7 years now, I've been watching him for years. He will use any phone that is offered to him. Any company that offers him a phone and will sponsor a video, he will use that phone. And Marzia bought him the Galaxy Fold. So he's not really in the market for phones or anything. He pretty much just uses any phone that's offered to him. He's not a tech reviewer. He's not a tech analyst. He doesn't follow that community. And he's also had lots of issues with his PCs, which again, he will practically use any PC that is offered to him. Any company that offers to sponsor a video will send him a really, really nice PC. And I've been watching him for a long time, and he's ran into a ton of issues with his PCs. So it's not like he's not into Apple products, but I will not say he's like a Windows and Android fanboy. He's basically like, I'm just going to use what I'm comfortable with. Does the screen smudge more than a normal glass display, or does it also have some oilophobic coating? I wouldn't say it's that noticeable. Like when the display is on, no, you don't really notice any smudges. When the display is off, it feels pretty smudgy, but you don't see it once the display's on. So no, that's not a problem. There's a lot of concerns I thought would come up with this thing that haven't. It's more of a I think my review of this phone is going to be more of an issue with the fundamental. Like, my issue with this phone still applies even if durability and price point are fixed, which is why I'm using this phone and I'm still convinced foldables are not the future. Even if you figure out the price points and even if you figure out the durability issues. Like, it's still just fundamentally not necessary, and this is not going to be demanded by the markets. Like, consumers aren't going to want this. Because as foldable phones get cheaper, flagship regular phones will also get cheaper. So just like the iPhone can get better and cheaper with time, I don't mean that every iPhone that comes out is cheaper than the last. I mean that older iPhones that are really good are getting cheaper, like the iPhone XR, which can do 90% of what someone needs a phone to do, and that thing's going to drop in price year after year, and then the iPhone 11 is going to drop in price. That's what foldables are going to be competing with. I mean, I think it's really easy for people to think that $1,400 is pretty close to flagship prices. It's really not, though. It's really not. Because if you look at the sales, especially with iPhones and Androids, of what's actually selling, $1,000 phones, while we may be comfortable with them in the tech community because we've seen them before, we've seen the Note 9, we've seen the iPhone 10, we've seen the XS Max, and we've seen the Pro Max, these are not top sellers. We know about them, but that doesn't mean that most people are spending $1,000 on the phone. Yes, trade-in values and financing options and upgrade programs and that kind of thing still apply, but $1,000 phones are not the norm. People have not adjusted to that. That's not what most people buy, and this is 40% more than that. When you think 1,400, you're like, oh, it's only $400 more. But no, like that's 40% of 1,000. That's a 40% increase in price point on a price that most people still don't do. So it's really quite up there, despite it being, it's like, it's $600 less than the Galaxy Fold. It's still not very good, though. That's still not very obtainable to the masses. Let's see. The tech is awesome, just not practical. We moved away from flip phones years and years ago, so why come back to it? Phone already fit in our pockets fine. Well, that's the thing. Like, flip phones were not the same phones we use today. Flip phones just needed a numpad and a very small, minimal display. Now we use our phones for so much more. To act like we need to also make them flippable, it's just a flawed idea in my mind. It's not a practical concept when uh, they can all fit in our pocket okay. And the running tradition for the past few years has been like, okay, we want bigger displays, but in the same footprint, make the bezel smaller. Okay, we're making the bezel smaller. I don't even really agree that much with the mobility factor. Like, it's pretty thick. This thing is still pretty thick folded up. It's still, it's. I know there's girls that wear short shorts and have very small pockets. I still don't think this would fit very well in them. I don't wear those shorts, so I don't know. But, like, this fits in my pocket pretty much the same way because it does not change the width of the phone. It's still a fairly large brick in your pocket at the end of the day. I don't think this fits much better in those little short pockets than traditional phones do. I mean, like, I think my sister said this when she looked at it. She was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, why does it do this? And I said, maybe that would, because my sister, for those who don't know, she's a woman. And I'm like, hey, will that fit in, like, girls' pockets better, right? Because your pockets are smaller? And she was like, well, yes, but we have adapted. We keep our phones in our purses now. And I think that's understandable, Like, girls aren't going to wait for foldables to become practical and cheap. They're just going to keep putting their phone in their purse. That's why they have you're not going to ditch the purse game. And I think this is more of a pants problem than a technology problem. I can't wait for phones to have 4K screens. Doubt it. Sony tried it. No one bought into it, and now we're all going the opposite direction. All phones are going lower pixel densities than previous years because people can't tell the difference. So, yeah, I don't think 4K screens are coming. Let's see. Can you wirelessly charge it when the phone is open? Seemed like you would have to balance it on one side. No, you can. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I'll try. I'll try to show you. So, okay. I have this stand over here. Screen is off. Put it on the charger. You can't see it. Okay, it's charging right now. It says wirelessly charging, 2 hours until full, and I can fold it up. Still charging. It's still charging in that position. So, yeah, you can wirelessly charge it open or fold it up. Either way. I don't know why you would want to fold it up and then place it on a charger. I would rather just, they put this little display on the outside, which people thought was cool, but I realized, like, they actually couldn't make this thing without the display on the outside. It would be ridiculous. Because if you put it on the wireless charger, you'd be like, well, I wonder what my phone's at. I want to check notifications. And with a traditional phone on a wireless charger, you can just tap it, see your notifications, see the time, see your charge level. But instead, they have to minimize it to a super small display. And you get some information out of it, but definitely less than a traditional phone because you have the power of the entire display. That's a little different. So we got some bits from Overachiever. Mr. Who's the Boss made an interesting video a while back that I never thought about buying an old flagship or buying a new budget phone. Which do you think is generally better for someone on a budget? I don't know. It varies a lot depending on what you care about. Like, for me, if I was on a budget, I don't even know for myself. I feel like I would want to buy older flagships because I feel like they devalue a lot faster when they've been out for a while. Like Apple, some of you don't know this, but Apple sells certified refurbished 10s and 10s Maxes. They don't sell them new anymore, but you can get them certified refurbished, and they're a lot cheaper than retail. And there's differences between the 11 and the 10s, but I mean, you can still have a very good flagship phone for a lot cheaper that way. But at the same time, I also care about battery life and I care about having the latest specs and CPU in the iPhone. So I can't decide. Would I rather switch to like a 10s refurbished or a new iPhone 11? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe for the sake of just having the newer thing, I would go with the budget one. I don't know. We got some bits from Michael. Wow, donated 39 bits. Thank you, sis. So, since foldables aren't the future, what do you think will be? I think we're going to get a lot more of the same. I think people are anticipating the next big thing to always come out every single year, and it's just not possible. You can't have giant breakthroughs all the time. And I think we're going to get a lot more of what we've already been getting, which is thinner bezels, better cameras, better displays, better battery lives, and just incremental upgrades for many, many years to come. When it comes to phones and stuff and tablets, I really don't think there's a whole lot more they can do. This is why I make EV content. This is why I talk about things outside of phones because I don't believe the phone industry is going to be that interesting. Like if I was excited for foldables, this would be very depressing because uh, the fun factor of a phone that folds and unfolds gets really really old when it becomes your daily driver and you just start using it for daily stuff and you're like, okay, yeah, it's like it gets old so fast, you know. When do you think we will be charging our phones through the air? I think that's a lot further away than we originally thought. You know, back in 2017, I would have thought that's just a few years away. But now that a few years have gone by and no one's really been able to do it successfully, I'm guessing it's over 10 years away, possibly. Foldable tablets slash no keyboard laptops going to be big. Give it a decade. Eh, I don't know. I don't think so because I used to be really big into the virtual keyboard. You know, when I first got an iPad, I was like, I don't need a physical keyboard. I'm going to type everything on the display. And people didn't like that. Everyone wanted a physical keyboard with their iPad. They were like, no, 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 no. I want a regular, because I need keys to go down when I press them. And that's just how the market has spoken. They're like, no, I don't want to type on a virtual keyboard. I need actual buttons. Um, so if that's going to continue being the trend, keyboards on laptops, you know, Apple tried to move people towards the touch bar and the butterfly keys with thinner keys, and people didn't like it. They're like, no, 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 go back. We want keys. We want them to push down. And a lot of people don't like the touch bar. I like the touch bar. Like I said, I'm a big fan of virtual keyboards. I don't need buttons, but the general market has spoken and said, no, we want keys, and they keep pushing the keyboard cases with the iPads. If they didn't push them, maybe you'd have an argument. But the problem is, like every single picture they show the iPad with, it's always got that keyboard attached to it. So it's kind of hard to imagine where that future ends up happening, especially when the 16-inch MacBook Pro comes out. It's like, okay, here's your old keyboard back. It didn't take smartphones a decade to get big. Yeah, that's true. They got big pretty quickly. If foldables aren't big in like 5 years, that's it. I think less than that. I mean, we're already in the second year, technically. I mean, Samsung had an attempted launch and a botched launch, which let's address that too, because for some reason, think I'm going to forget that when I talk about it in my review. So I think I should just bring it up now. If you're really into the idea of foldable technology, and you think this is the next wave of things for tablets and phones and laptops or whatever, this is where tech is headed, you should not be encouraging what Samsung is doing. What Samsung is doing is rushing the technology. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, maybe foldables are the next big thing, and I'm incorrectly predicting this. I completely consider that an option. I'm not the tech channel that's going to say I'm right about everything and I never am wrong and I'm flawless with my predictions. I'm not. I make mistakes and I make incorrect predictions all the time, and I'm not hiding that. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. But let's say I'm wrong and foldables are the next big thing. What Samsung is doing is not helping. What Samsung is doing is scaring people away from the technology and making them think that it's not going to work. Because by releasing phones that break easy, that have day one issues, that are expensive, and by not waiting for the technology to mature and just trying to ship it out as fast as possible, you're making the public not interested because you're showing them models that should not have left the R&D department. This type of stuff should not be sold and shipped out when it's clearly not ready, especially at the price point that they're selling it at. It's just kind of scaring people off of the idea entirely. You know, if the Galaxy Fold didn't come out and there was no Mate X or anything, and there was no phone companies trying to send out these foldable phones, foldables would still be like kind of a mythical idea. They'd be kind of one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, maybe foldable, maybe that'll come out, maybe that'll be interesting. But once you start shipping them before they're ready and showing everyone their significant disadvantages and flaws, it's just going to put a big bad taste in everyone's mouth where they're suddenly not interested in them anymore. And now it's like, even if a company does come out with a foldable that is actually durable and can hold up and have good specs at a decent price point, everyone's going to be like, yeah, but I thought those things break all the time and they're not durable, so now I'm not interested. It's scaring people off. So even if you do believe in foldables are the future, I don't think you should be encouraging Samsung's behavior, personally. Mate X was the best foldable concept. Foldable screens are far away, though. I disagree. I thought that was a terrible idea because when I'm using this thing opened and it's on a table or something, I am paranoid that this thing is going to scratch because I know how not durable it is, and I know that this is not glass on the outside. So I'm worried the whole time when using it. And the Mate X wants to wrap this material all the way around the phone on the front and back, which would just make me ultra paranoid. I wouldn't want to even put that thing in my pocket. I would be nervous about using it all the time. I'd be terrified of it. There are patents that describe how they can make the glass feel like different textures, so maybe they can eventually simulate a real keyboard like they did with the trackpad on the MacBook. It's not the same. I don't know. Maybe they can, but I feel like keyboards are different. People like being able to feel keys, whereas a trackpad can just be one finger, one click, not a series of buttons that your muscle memory has trained you to click when you're typing. Also, people won't trust now because Samsung kind of lied about this glass part, so if they're saying it's durable now, no one will buy it. Right, when people are having their Z Flip break as soon as they open it and there's a cold temperature problem, and I saw lots of people with scratches on their phone like on day one and stuff like that. It's like, this isn't helping. It's not forcing people. It's not pushing us to a foldable future faster. It's just scaring people away. If Apple makes one, it would be the best. I encourage people, because I see that comment a lot anytime I criticize something. Everyone always says, well, if Apple did it, you would like it. Which, let me remind you, I criticize Apple all the time. Like, this predetermined notion that everything Apple does I immediately praise is not true. Go look at my videos on the Pro Display. Go look at my videos on the iMac. Go look at my videos on the Mac Pro. I've criticized all of them very heavily. And all of which are Apple products. If I was that guy you all described me at, I would be praising the Pro Display and the Pro Stand, but I don't. I've openly and many times on multiple platforms complained about them. And you shouldn't expect anything different if Apple made a foldable with these compromises at this price point. I would say, no, this isn't good. I have openly said in the past that I do think if Apple made a foldable, I don't think they will. They've clearly shown in the past they're not really interested that much in 2-in-1 devices. Apple never made a MacBook iPad hybrid like Microsoft did. So why would they make a iPad iPhone hybrid? Like, they're not into those middle categories. They're usually more interested in standalone categories. But what I have said is that if Apple did make a foldable, it would probably be the best one because of software. Hardware limitations, they would probably have all the same ones as Samsung or Motorola. But when it comes to software, Apple successfully sells lots of iPhones, and people enjoy them. They like the software, and they enjoy the resale value. And people really, really like iPads and the way they handle software. So if you could have an iPad unfolded, iPhone folded up, those are two really good selling products. Samsung doesn't really sell tablets that well. Their software is not known for being very good, and their sales come nowhere near that of the iPad. So Apple has a foot in both these categories. If they were to make a hybrid of the two, they would probably get it better than everyone. That doesn't mean the product would be good, That doesn't mean it would receive my endorsement or that I would even use the thing. I would much rather have an iPhone and an iPad than something that's trying to be both because I know it couldn't do what I want. There's a lot of things I like about my iPhone. There's a lot of things I like about my iPad. I don't think there's a product that can combine the two into something that can achieve what both they could do separately. I'd rather have two separate ones. 100 bits from Chris. Samsung, we try things that don't work and we mock people who scare you and change you. I'm glad that they seem to be toning it down on the Apple mockery as of lately. They took down those commercials and they didn't want to talk about the iPhone at the S20 event. So I give them credit for changing. And if you guys recall, it's another thing is you guys, there's people who don't watch my content that like to label me as you hate everything Samsung does and you would love it if Apple did it, which again, historically not true. There's a lot of things every single Galaxy S phone I've usually had very nice things to say about. I think the only S phone in recent history that I didn't really have much nice to say about was the Galaxy S9. And that wasn't really a criticism of the phone being bad, it was just uneventful. I used the S8 and I uploaded a video. This was years ago. This is not like I'm changing and I've become more open-minded. I really haven't. I've pretty much stayed the same. I've stayed fairly consistent over the years. But my point is, way back in the Attic days when I got the Galaxy S8, I said, this makes me want to ditch my iPhone. I love this thing. It's amazing. I'm going to keep it. And I did keep it for a lot more than a month. And with the S9, I was like, it's fine. It's just I'm preferring the iPhone hardware now. Shh. It's making noises. So the S9, I was like, this isn't really that big an upgrade. I don't see what people are excited for. But then the S10 came out, and I praised that thing. I made a video called The Apple Sheep's Jealous of the S10, and I listed a bunch of things I loved about it that I wanted to see brought to the iPhone. I had nothing but great things to say about the S10. Pretty similar with the OnePlus 7 Pro. Very nice things to say about it. I love that phone, and there was so much I wanted on that phone on other phones. But, yeah, overall, I had some issues with it. But, like, if you watch my videos consistently, you'll realize that I'm not trying to dumb things down into just all things Apple does is good and all things Android does is bad. It's like, my hope is I can admit to you that I'm biased and opinionated so that my opinion holds more value when reviewing competitors. Because, if I say something nice about the Z Flip, it probably means something given I'm an Apple sheep. I prefer Apple. Where my bias and opinion lies. So if I say something nice about the competitor, that's heartfelt. That's genuine. That's not just, a lot of channels which are just like, I will be objective as possible, must list positives and negatives, equal numbers of both. It was like, no, I want to come from the viewpoint of, what my preference is, but this is my opinion on the competitor. And if I'm a diehard Apple sheep and I love Apple products and that's where my preference lies, and I say the S10 is good, that says something to all you Fandroids out there, or not even Fandroids, just people who prefer Android. Just like, oh, well, the Apple guy even says the S10 is good, so it must be good, That's my point. That's the objective. It's not, some people think my argument is just, get everyone to switch to Apple and then we will win the war, and that's not my point. My point is for people to buy the stuff they enjoy. Otherwise, I wouldn't review this stuff. I would just keep reviewing iPhones and say never buy an Android. In a world where every phone ran Android, including the iPhone, would you still choose the iPhone or go for something else? That's a good question. I'd probably switch around a little bit. It's kind of hard to say. Because a lot of the reasons I prefer the iPhone are the way the software and hardware work together. So, is the A13 chip still the best? I might use an S20 Ultra if there was no iOS on planet Earth. I could see that. But there's a lot of hardware things I prefer. I prefer Face ID though. I don't want a fingerprint reader underneath the display. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Excuse me. Foldables are good for girls because the pocket size is a bad argument since most girls don't have large enough hands to use it even with both hands. That's true. I was going to say most girls probably have smaller hands than I do, and this would not fit that very well. I wonder what foldable prototypes Apple has in their secret labs. That's another thing. A lot of people were saying that Apple's going to make a foldable, Drew. Be careful criticizing foldables because Apple's going to do it. They have patents for it. It's like, you're clearly not looking at how many patents Apple has, because there are patents for tons of things that never come out. Tons of things. In fact, the vast majority of Apple's patents don't actually come into real products. It's like 80-20, probably more than that. It's more like 90% of stuff they have patents for end up not really making their way into actual products. Sure, I'm sure Apple is investigating foldable technology, but they don't freaking sell it. They don't ship it out because they understand it's not ready yet. That's what Apple does, is they test that stuff internally so that you don't have unhappy customers, and that you don't have things like the Galaxy Fold launch, which is really embarrassing. Apple has patents for in-screen finger screen sensor. That aged well. They've had that since before the iPhone 10, by the way. They had a patent for a fingerprint reader underneath the display in 2016. And here we are, 4 years later, it never came out. They also have patents for MacBooks with touchscreens. They also have patents for iPhones that lock into a MacBook and power it. And those were years ago. I'm not listing past patents that were announced a couple days ago. I'm talking about patents that came out like 3-4 years ago. Like there was a patent for an iMac that you could swivel down to be horizontal and then use as a touch interface. Never came out. You say the Surface Studio, but they passed that touchscreen iMac patent like 10 years ago. I think it was a long time ago. Does Apple even have that many foldable prototypes? I honestly doubt they're seriously looking into it, and they're probably more focused on the products that they know will succeed. Apple has an insane R&D department. They spend billions of dollars a year on researching all kinds of stuff. Way more crazy stuff than foldables. They have patents and research being done for internet satellites. Like stuff they're not even touching right now. Apple doesn't send rockets into space, but they're investigating it. They have tons of patents for vehicle technology. They've been passing patents for a self-driving car for 4 years now. It's been around for a long time, but that doesn't mean it's coming out. So I just mean, like, yes, I'm sure there's a division at Apple. If they passed a patent for a type of foldable hinge, sure, they're probably working on one, but that does not guarantee anything. There's a bunch of stuff they probably investigate that never comes out. That's their expression. Like 1,000 no's for every yes. So they have to put it through some extreme hardcore testing and marketing to figure out whether or not they're actually going to ship the thing. So there's they call them moonshot projects. Like they have teams at Apple that just focus on crazy things that may never see the light of day, just to see if they can maybe utilize some of the technology developed along the way in other products. Google does the same thing, except they just cancel it all the time. Apple has a patent for a pizza box, but that actually did go into use. They have a special designed pizza box that they only use at Apple HQ and nowhere else. That's a real thing. You can look it up. They made a video about it. They're investing that much on foldables if you compare it to other things. Yeah, I mean, like, foldables are probably one of the many things they're investigating. I don't think they're betting big on foldables. I just think that there's probably some people at Apple that are investigating it. I'm sure they're looking at this stuff. I'm sure they're looking at what Samsung's doing, and they probably have a Galaxy Fold there. Everyone said they do a 2-in-1 like the Surface, and they never did that. Exactly. That's my point. Apple's the type of company to not go hybrid. When everyone in the industry was like, touchscreens! Touchscreens are coming out. That means we got to put touchscreens on the desktop and on the laptop. That way you can touch the display. Apple was like, no, we don't do it that way. We either have laptop or an iPad. That's it. There's no mixture of the two. Okay? That's it. Whereas everyone else was like, is it a tablet? Is it a laptop? It can be both. It can be a 2-in-1 with the Pixel Book and the Surface Book. Or now this one detaches and then loses its GPU. And you can have these little great demo. Apple doesn't care. And just laptops are laptops. The Mr. Incredible meme. There's an extremely interesting documentary on the original iPhone. It was a very stressful development process. I've probably seen it. I think I know what documentary you're talking about. Let's see. Apple patents are meant to throw people off? That's a bit of a stretch. Maybe. They might be. I think they do it for legal reasons, but yeah, you could be right. iPhone 10 was a moonshot project. Well, I'm sure a lot of the tech in the iPhone 10 were moonshot projects, yeah, but it took years for them to be like, okay, we can ship this now. Apple, we tell our customers no. They do. That's the Worldwide Developers Conference on stage. They're like, are we merging Mac OS and iOS? No. Like, how many companies do you know would do that? Would like pitch an idea on stage and say, no, this thing everyone's asking for, we're not going to do it. Shut up, you're wrong. Craig's words, not mine. You know, he said that on stage. Except he used the F word. He said, shut the up, you idiots. What's wrong with you? It was hilarious. I love that event. I know you don't generally like consoles, but are you more excited for PS5 or Xbox One Series X? Weird naming. I'm not really on board with the design for the Series X Xbox. I saw a leaked picture of one. Ugh. And the I/O was really bad. It was like, why does the Xbox Series X still have USB-A ports on it? Like, this is the next-gen console, and we're still not moving to USB-C yet? Like, I don't know. I've seen concepts of the PS5, and they look a bit more reasonable. I don't, like, for a console, I want it to be able to fit very slimly and easily on a TV stand. And it looked like that Series X Xbox is all more rectangular and long this way, and it wouldn't fit on a TV stand as well. So I saw it, and I was like, eh. I mean, you know me, though. I'm not a console guy. I don't care. I'm not really that into it. But thank you for the donation. Again, back in 2017, AirPower was as ready to launch as Galaxy Fold in February 2019, but only one company was smart enough to not release it. I still think Apple should have not unveiled it on stage. I mean, I agree with you that they were right to not release it, but at the same time, like, yeah, they definitely screwed that one up. They should not have showed it on stage. That was a bad idea. Can his team even respond to emails? Oh, yeah, Craig does, yeah. Maybe there's other cool people at Apple, you just don't see them on stage. I'm sure there's lots of them that you don't see them on stage. Johnny Ive was a good example. I mean, he's gone now, but he was like almost never on stage at keynotes. What do I think of the iPhone 9 SE 2? I think it looks awesome. I think it'll sell really well. It's kind of a boring phone, but a good one. And I'll pick one up for sure. I'm like 100% getting one. I don't know if I'll keep it, but I definitely want to get my hands on one. I'm just hoping they put the 10R camera in there. That's the one thing I'm not sure about that I really hope they do. Because if you have a decent single lens with an A13 chip equipped, you could take some night mode shots with a $400 iPhone. Whew, that thing would be awesome. What's the worst Apple event ever? Ooh, I don't know. It probably changes for people, but for me, that services event was pretty bad. It was pretty cringy all the way through, and it felt like we just kept waiting for hardware to show up, and it never did. And it was so long. There were so many people talking about. Freaking trailers and movies that were coming out, and it was like 2.5 hours. I thought that was pretty bad. The education event, I didn't even watch that one. They didn't even live stream that. I'm kind of sure they'll put the 11 main camera into it, not the 10R camera. Those are almost the same, but yeah. I think night mode needs the ultra-wide lens. I don't think so. I think the night mode is dependent on the A13 chip more than it is the ultra-wide lens. An entire event for one slightly better iPad. Yeah, but it wasn't live streamed, so I don't know. I don't even count. They weren't asking for much attention on it in the first place, so I think that kind of justifies it. Services one was pretty bad. Out of all the events, especially events I've done live reactions to here on Twitch, that one was rough. Companies inventing folding phones. I put the brains and the brawn together. Good job, Raphael. Good meme. The 11 main lens has dual pixel AF, which is kind of important for low light focusing. The 10R doesn't have that. Okay. You need good income to use Apple products? No, that's not true. There are good Apple products that are cheap. They're just not on the front page. You just got to look for them. Anyway, I've got to wrap up. I've got a video to upload to the EV channel. Let's hope all my channels don't get deleted from the copyright strikes. That's not fun. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the donations and the Twitch Primes. I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. Have a good day.